You woke a morning and could not bring yourself to leave the bed, not from sickness, not from sadness you can name, but from a pull so quiet and so total that even the thought of standing felt like betraying something inside you. This is not because you are lazy. You are not depressed in the way the world names it. You are not failing at being human. You are listening to something older than your mind, deeper than your will, and wiser than the voice that tells you to keep moving. Carl Jung spent his life studying the soul's hidden language. He knew that the psyche does not speak in words. It speaks in symptoms, in impulses, in the sudden loss of all desire to participate in the life you have built. And when your body refuses to rise, when every cell in you leans towards stillness, Jung would say this is not collapse. It is communication. The urge to lie down all day is not the signal that something is wrong with you. It is the signal that something inside you has been ignored for too long. And now, finally, it is demanding to be heard. There is a peculiar ache that lives beneath productivity. You cannot see it while you are moving. You cannot feel it while your calendar is full. But the moment the world asks you to rise and you find that you cannot, this ache becomes undeniable. It is not the ache of muscles. It is not even emotional pain in the way you have been taught to recognize it. It is something more fundamental, a heaviness that seems to rise from the bones themselves as if gravity has doubled only for you. Jung called this the soul's veto. He believed that the unconscious mind holds a kind of ancient authority. It knows when you are living out of alignment with your deeper nature. It knows when your outer performance has drifted too far from your inner truth. And when that distance becomes unbearable, the unconscious does not argue. It does not debate. It simply withdraws the energy that makes performance possible. You wake up and find that you cannot care. Not because you have chosen indifference, but because the part of you that powers false living has quietly stepped back. This is not a breakdown. This is a boundary. The psyche refuses to continue animating a life that no longer serves the soul. And so it does the only thing it can. It stops. It pulls you down into stillness. It makes the bed feel like the only honest place left in the world. Most people interpret this as failure. They think, I should be stronger. I should push through. But Jung saw it differently. He saw the body as the soul's first messenger. Before the mind understands that something must change, the body already knows. It refuses to move in a direction that betrays your wholeness. This refusal is not weakness. It is wisdom dressed as fatigue. There is a reason why lying down feels so strangely safe. It is because, in that position, you are no longer performing. You are no longer pretending to be energized by things that drain you. You are no longer holding up the mask of capability when inside you feel hollow. Horizontal, you are honest. Jung observed that many of his patients who felt this overwhelming need to retreat were not suffering from lack of willpower. They were suffering from a life constructed around other people's values. They had been dutiful. They had been responsible. They had done everything right according to the world's map. But the soul does not follow the world's map. It follows an inner blueprint that cannot be borrowed or inherited. When your life begins to deviate too far from that blueprint, the psyche sends a warning. And if you ignore the warning long enough, it stops warning. It simply stops. The bed becomes the only place where you do not have to lie to yourself, where you do not have to act as though everything is fine, where you can finally let your body tell the truth your words have been hiding. This is why forcing yourself up often feels like violence, because it is. You are overriding the one part of you still speaking honestly. Jung understood that the soul operates in cycles, not straight lines. There are seasons of expansion and seasons of withdrawal, seasons of visibility and seasons of descent. The problem is that modern life has no tolerance for descent. It demands perpetual ascent. It punishes rest. It pathologizes stillness. But the psyche cannot be whipped into endless production. It requires intervals of dark privacy where it can digest what has been lived, dissolve what no longer fits, and prepare the ground for what wants to grow next. When you feel the pull to lie down all day, you are being called into one of these intervals. Jung would say you are entering the chamber of dissolution. Nothing about this process looks productive from the outside. You appear to be doing nothing. But beneath the surface of consciousness, an entire inner world is shifting. Old identities are loosening. Outdated beliefs are crumbling. The structure of how you see yourself is being quietly dismantled so that a truer structure can begin to form. This is not stagnation. This is metamorphosis at the psychic level. And it requires one thing above all else: your willingness to stop. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much you have done. You can sleep for 10 hours and wake feeling as though you have been carrying stones through the night. You can rest all weekend and return to Monday with the same bone-deep weariness that sent you to bed in the first place. This is because the tiredness is not in your muscles. It is in your meaning. Jung recognized that human beings do not run on willpower alone. We run on purpose, on resonance, on the feeling that what we do each day connects to something larger than survival. When that connection breaks, when your days become a series of motions without meaning, the psyche begins to starve. And a starving soul does not collapse loudly. It grows silent. It grows heavy. It pulls you down into stillness because it has nothing left to fuel. You lie in bed not because you are weak, but because you are empty of reasons to rise that feel true. Jung called this the crisis of unlived life. It happens when you have spent years building a self that looks successful but feels hollow. When you have chosen safety over authenticity so many times that you no longer remember what authenticity feels like. When the person you show the world is so far removed from the person you are inside that even you cannot find the way back. The heaviness is your soul refusing to participate in the illusion any longer. What makes this so disorienting is that nothing may have visibly changed. Your job is the same. Your relationships are intact. Your routines continue. But something beneath the surface has shifted, and now the life that once felt manageable feels impossible. Jung would tell you this is because your unconscious has matured past the life your conscious mind is still trying to live. The soul grows in the dark. It evolves through dreams, through quiet realizations, through the slow accumulation of experiences that change you in ways you do not notice until one day you wake up and realize you are no longer the person who built this life. And now that person's life no longer fits. The urge to lie down is the soul's refusal to continue wearing a shape it has outgrown. It is the psyche saying, I will not pretend anymore. I will not animate a role that is too small for what I have become. This is terrifying because it means something must end. Not dramatically, not with a clear decision, but slowly, quietly, through a withdrawal of energy that makes the old life feel unbearable. You are not losing yourself. You are being asked to find yourself again. There is a space Jung spoke of that exists between who you were and who you are becoming. He called it the liminal zone, the threshold. It is the place where the old identity has dissolved but the new one has not yet taken form. This is where many people find themselves when the desire to lie down becomes overwhelming. You are no longer the person who once moved through the world with certainty, but you are not yet the person you are becoming. You exist in between, suspended in a kind of psychic fog where nothing feels clear and nothing feels solid. Jung warned that this is the most dangerous time to force yourself back into motion. Because if you rush out of the liminal space too quickly, if you grab onto the first identity or purpose that promises relief, you will only recreate the same structure that exhausted you. You will build another false self, another mask, another life that looks right but feels wrong. The task is not to escape the threshold. The task is to remain in it long enough for something genuine to emerge. This requires a kind of patience that modern life does not teach. It requires the willingness to lie in the uncertainty, to let the days feel empty, to stop demanding that you know what comes next. The liminal zone is not a place of answers. It is a place of incubation. And what is incubating is the next version of your soul. Jung believed that every human being carries two centers of identity. The first is the ego, the conscious self that plans, decides, and navigates the world. The second is the self, the deeper, unconscious totality that holds your truest nature. For most of your life, the ego is in control. It builds your personality. It shapes your ambitions. It decides who you will become based on what seems safe, acceptable, desirable. But the self does not care about safety, cares about wholeness. And when the life your ego has constructed begins to block the path toward wholeness, the self intervenes, not through reasoning, not through advice, but through the withdrawal of vital energy. You stop wanting to get up because the self is no longer supporting the ego's project. This is not punishment. This is redirection. The self is pulling you inward so you can remember what you forgot while you were busy becoming acceptable. It is guiding you back toward the parts of yourself you abandoned, the desires you buried, the truths you could not afford to speak, the version of life that once felt possible before fear taught you to settle. When you lie down and feel that strange peace beneath the heaviness, you are touching the presence of the self. You are resting in the part of you that does not need to perform, that does not need to justify its existence, that simply is. And in that rest, the self begins to show you what the ego has been hiding. There are questions that only stillness can answer. Questions like, what am I living for? What do I actually want? What have I been pretending not to know? These questions do not appear when you are busy. They do not surface when your schedule is full. They wait for the moment when you finally stop moving, when the noise dies down, when you have no choice but to face the silence inside you. And that is when the truth begins to rise. Jung taught that the unconscious speaks most clearly when the conscious mind is quiet. It sends images, memories, sudden realizations that feel like they have been waiting years to arrive. You lie in bed and a scene from your childhood appears. A conversation you have not thought about in a decade suddenly matters. A feeling you could not name finally finds its shape. This is the soul sorting through the archive of your life, showing you what you missed the first time. Some of what surfaces will be painful. You will see the ways you betrayed yourself, the moments you said yes when you meant no, the relationships you stayed in long after they stopped nourishing you, the dreams you let die because they seemed impractical. But some of what surfaces will be liberating. You will remember what you loved before the world told you what to love. You will feel the pull of something you abandoned that still wants to live. You will sense the outline of a life that feels truer than the one you are living now. This is the gift of the descent. It shows you what you could not see while you were standing. The weight you feel is not random. It is not a chemical accident or a failure of your nervous system. Jung believed that every psychological symptom carries intelligence. The body does not lie. It does not manipulate. When it speaks through heaviness, through the refusal to engage, it is offering you information that your conscious mind has been too afraid to acknowledge. The urge to lie down is the body saying, what you are doing is not sustainable. Who you are pretending to be is costing you something essential. The direction you are moving does not lead where your soul needs to go. This is not metaphor. This is the psyche protecting itself the only way it knows how. Jung observed that many people who came to him feeling paralyzed by fatigue were not physically ill. They were psychically exhausted by the effort of living against themselves. They had spent so long managing other people's expectations, fulfilling roles they never chose, and suppressing their real desires that the soul simply ran out of fuel. What they called depression, Jung called soul loss. And soul loss does not respond to motivation. It does not respond to discipline. It responds to one thing only: return. The return to honesty. The return to what feels alive rather than what feels safe. The return to the self you abandoned somewhere along the way. When you lie down and cannot rise, you are being held in place until you agree to return. There is a myth Jung often referenced, the story of the night sea journey. In this archetypal pattern, the hero is swallowed by a great creature and carried into the depths. There, in the belly of darkness, the hero is dissolved, stripped of weapons, titles, and identity, reduced to nothing. And it is only in this nothingness that transformation becomes possible. Jung saw this pattern repeating in the human psyche. There are times when life asks you to descend, not into literal darkness, but into the dark interior of your own being, into the parts of yourself you have been avoiding, into the grief you never processed, into the rage you learned to swallow, into the loneliness you covered with busyness. The bed becomes the belly of the whale, and lying there, unable to move, you are being digested by your own unconscious. The false layers are being dissolved. The personas you wore to survive are being stripped away. What remains is raw, undefended, and closer to truth than anything you have allowed yourself to feel in years. This is not comfortable, but it is necessary. Jung warned that if you try to climb out of the belly too soon, if you refuse the dissolution, you will carry the undigested material with you into the next phase of life. It will surface again. The heaviness will return. The soul will pull you down again because the work was not finished. The only way out is through. There is a question many people ask when they reach this point: how long will this last? And the answer Jung would give is this: as long as it needs to. The psyche does not operate on your timeline. It does not care about deadlines or productivity schedules. It moves according to its own rhythm, its own necessity. Some people remain in the liminal darkness for weeks, others for months, a few for years. There is a moment in every descent when you begin to notice something strange. The world has not stopped. People are still moving. Obligations are still waiting. But somehow, from this horizontal position, none of it touches you the way it used to. You feel separate, not isolated but detached, as though you are watching your life from a distance. Jung called this the observer rising. It is the part of you that is not caught in the drama. The part that can witness your pain without being destroyed by it. The part that sees your patterns without judgment. This observer does not emerge when you are busy. It emerges when you stop. And once it emerges, everything changes. You begin to see how much of your life has been automatic. How many decisions you made without ever questioning them. How many beliefs you carried that were never actually yours. How many roles you played because no one ever told you it was acceptable to stop performing. The observer does not fix these things. It simply sees them. And in the seeing, something begins to loosen. You realize that the life you thought you had to live is not the only option. That the person you thought you had to be is not who you are. That the future you were terrified of losing was never the future your soul wanted in the first place. This realization does not arrive as relief. At first, it arrives as grief, because now you must mourn the life you will not live, the version of yourself you will not become. The path you invested so much energy in that now reveals itself as wrong. But beneath the grief, something else is stirring. Something quiet and unformed. Something that feels like possibility. Jung spoke often of the phoenix, the mythical bird that burns itself to ash and rises renewed. But he emphasized one detail most people overlook. The phoenix does not rise immediately. It sits in the ash. It rests in the remnants of what it was. Only after the stillness, after the silence, after the complete surrender to dissolution, does it gather itself and take flight again. You are in the ash now, and the mistake most people make is trying to rise too soon. They feel one flicker of energy and immediately try to rebuild the old life. They return to the same job with the same dread. They re-enter the same relationships with the same patterns. They pick up the same habits that emptied them in the first place. And within weeks, sometimes days, the heaviness returns. Because the soul is not interested in resurrection of the old self. It is interested in the birth of the new one. Jung taught that transformation is only complete when you honor what the descent revealed. When you take the insights from the darkness and let them reshape how you live in the light. When you stop pretending that lying down was just a phase you need to recover from and start recognizing it as an initiation you must integrate. The person who rises from sacred stillness is not the same person who fell into it. You do not return to your old life. You return to life itself, but with new eyes, new boundaries, new clarity about what you will and will not carry forward. There will come a morning when the weight lifts, not all at once, not with fanfare, but quietly like fog burning off a field at dawn. You will wake and notice that your breath feels deeper, that the light through the window looks softer, that the thought of standing does not feel like betrayal anymore. This is not willpower returning. This is the soul signaling that the inner work has reached completion, that the gestation is over, that something new is ready to emerge. Jung believed this moment must be treated with great care, because the temptation will be to leap back into motion, to prove to yourself and others that you are fine now, that the darkness is behind you. But the soul does not ask you to rush. It asks you to rise slowly, deliberately, with reverence for what you have been through. You begin by moving in small ways. You sit at the edge of the bed and feel your feet on the floor. You walk to the window and notice the sky. You make tea and taste it. You do not fill your calendar. You do not announce your return. You simply practice being upright again without abandoning the truth you found while lying down. This is the art of re-entry, moving back into the world without losing touch with the underworld. Jung understood that the people who integrate their descents become different kinds of humans. They carry a certain groundedness, a quietness that is not weakness but depth. They do not react to life the way they used to. They do not chase validation the way they once did. They have touched something inside themselves that the outer world cannot give or take away. They have met the self. And once you have met the self, you cannot fully abandon it again. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes honest. You stop lying to yourself about what you want. You stop pretending you are fine when you are not. You stop forcing yourself into shapes that do not fit. You begin to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. And this changes everything. The work you choose, the people you let close, the way you spend your time, the goals you pursue. All of it begins to align with something deeper than ambition or fear. It begins to align with soul. Jung called this individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you actually are rather than who you were conditioned to be. And for many, the journey begins the day they could not get out of bed. If you are reading this and you recognize yourself in these words, there is something I need you to understand. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are not behind. You are exactly where your soul needs you to be. The desire to lie down is not a symptom to be cured. It is a message to be received. Your psyche is asking you to stop, to turn inward, to listen to the parts of yourself that have been silenced by a life built on other people's blueprints. This is not comfortable, but it is sacred. And if you can meet this stillness with honesty instead of shame, if you can let the descent do its work without forcing yourself back into motion prematurely, you will emerge not weaker but more whole. Jung spent his entire career observing this pattern. The people who descended and returned were the ones who lived most fully. They were the ones who found meaning not in avoiding darkness but in learning to move through it with awareness. You are in the middle of that process now. The bed is not your prison. It is your chrysalis. The heaviness is not your enemy. It is your teacher. The silence is not emptiness. It is the space where your next self is forming. So if you woke today and felt that pull to stay down, do not fight it. Do not shame it. Do not let the world convince you that stillness is failure. Lie down if you need to. Rest if your soul is asking. Withdraw if the noise has become unbearable. But while you are there, listen. Ask the weight what it wants you to know. Ask the tiredness what it is protecting you from. Ask the silence what it is trying to birth. Because somewhere in the answers, you will find the thread that leads you back to yourself. Not the self you were told to be, but the self you have always been beneath the performance. And when you finally rise, and you will rise, you will carry that self forward into a life that feels true. Not perfect, not easy, but true. And that is what the soul has been asking for all along. If this reached you, if something in these words touched the part of you that has been lying in the dark wondering if you will ever feel whole again, leave a word in the comments. Let me know which part spoke to you. Your voice might be the light someone else needs to know they are not alone in this descent. And if you want to continue walking this path, exploring the language of the soul that Jung spent his life translating, stay with me. There is more to uncover, more to understand, more to remember about who you are when no one is watching. You were never meant to perform your way through existence. You were meant to live from the deepest truth you can find. Rest when the soul calls you. Rise when it releases you. And trust that both are necessary. Your becoming has already begun.